today we are going to do some introduction to sewing. So the first thing we're going to need is our tapestry needle, and you'll see that it's pretty dull at the end, so it won't hurt us when we're using it. See that it has a big eye, which is perfect because we are going to be threading our string through that little hole. We're also going to need some tape and scissors for us to start. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to pick out your type of thread that you'd want. We're going to use embroidery thread, so it's a little bit thicker. So once you start to pull, you'll see that it just carefully comes out. We need to put a piece of tape at the end of this thread. So I have my tape and I'm just putting it on here, and then I'm going to fold that tape just once. And what I can do is I can trim off any of the extra piece of tape, and this is going to help us thread our needle. It's going to keep it straight so that the string doesn't pull apart. You're going to see we're going to pull through, and there you go. And we are going to do a double thread, so you're going to want to keep pulling, say maybe like an arm's length apart is the amount of thread you want. So it's doubled right through there, and we are going to cut at the end. So I need to find my end. I'm going to cut it. You can also, while you're at it, cut that little bit of tape off because we are not going to need that. Now what we need to do at the end is we need to tie a knot. So we're going to loop it right through the hole. We'll do that again. You can see those two strings coming through. I'm just going to want to loop that. This is your little tail. You do not have to cut your tail right now. And what we're going to first start to do is just get the basic motions of sewing, and we're going to start with one of our foam plates. You'll have a couple, so there'll be more for you to do some practicing on. So the first thing I want to do, it doesn't matter either side of the foam plate, and we are going to push that needle through, and our knot is going to come and it's going to stop that from pulling all the way through. So now we've made our first step of sewing. Now what we're going to do is we're going to practice making a line. So I want you to push that needle back through and then pull it all the way out. You want it to be taut. And now we're going to go from this side of the plate where the string is out, and you're going to go back in, following that invisible line we're going to be making. And wherever the string comes out of is where you want to push forward on the plate. Put that needle through again. And we're going to keep doing this. And it's okay if your lines, the thread, is not perfect. We're just practicing. They don't all have to be the same size. We will work towards that. Right now we're just getting the basic motion of going in and out, pushing through and pulling out. Now when I get to the end, I am going to tie my knot off. And I did my one knot. I'm going to do one more knot just to make sure it doesn't pull through at all. All right. And then I can cut. So I have two little tails, but that's okay because we're going to be looking at the plate from this. So you're going to have an inside and an outside. The inside is what is going to be hidden. So now that we have a basic stitch right here, we are going to do another stitch, another line of stitching, but this time we're going to do some back stitching. So I'll show you what that means in just a minute. We're going to do the same exercise that we just did. Anywhere else on your plate you can do it, going across, up and down, wherever you'd like. So I have my knot tied at the bottom so it won't pull through. And now I'm going to pull my thread through again, and there's my tail. And again, I'm going to go pushing in and pulling out. All right, now I'm going to stop right here. And now what I want to do is I want to make one solid line. I don't want it to be dashed anymore. So I'm going to go through that same hole right up top where I've already gone through, and I'm going to pull my string through. See how it's starting to make a solid line? Then we're going to go to the other side of the plate, and in this hole right here, the hole that you've already used, we're going to bring that needle through it again. And what we're doing right now is called back stitching. Now I'm going to go through that next hole that's already been created, pull through, and I'm going to keep doing this. So now I have a solid line. And what I'm going to do is on the back side, I'm going to tie a knot around my string to end it. I'm going to do a double knot, just make sure it's really on there. And I want to cut the string, but still leaving that little end, that little tail, because I don't want to cut my knot off by accident. All right, so you can keep practicing for as long as you want, and then feel free to move forward with the video when you feel like you're ready. All right, our next step is we're going to take our new piece of foam plate, and we're going to have our pencil. You can draw on either side of the plate, it doesn't matter, whichever you'd like. And what you're going to start to do is you're going to draw a simple shape or an image, something that's not too complicated. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a flower. So right in the center of my plate, and you'll see that the pencil kind of makes a little indent. So you want to do a whisper line. A whisper line is a really quiet line, a very light line. So I don't want to be breaking my plate, my foam plate. I don't want to be poking my pencil through to create a hole. Just want it to make an indent, a line that I can follow. And now I'm going to make some petals. And again, really lightly, not puncturing the plate. Alright, so there is my flower. And now I'm ready. And I want to use two different colors. The first color I'm going to use is my pink color that I was using in the first half of the video. This is going to be for my petals. I'm going to tie my knot at the end of that string so that my thread won't go all the way through. Okay. So this is my inside of my plate. This is going to be where all of my tails are. This is going to be the outside of my plate. This is what I want my viewer to see. I don't want them to see any of those tails. So what I'm going to do is I am going to push my needle through, and there, got my knot that stopped it. What you can do is you can make holes, which will show you where you need to put each needle hole through, so that on the other side you can see where the needle needs to go through to follow that design. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that all the way around every petal. Now I can see on the other side where I need to put my needle. You want to be careful that you're not pulling too tight and ripping the foam, but you do want to make sure that your string is pulled all the way through. Alright, so now I'm running out of thread. Before I use up all of this thread, I need to tie a knot. Knot it off, and make sure you're knotting it off on the outside of the plate, or sorry, the inside of the plate, the side where you have your other tails. And you can just do one knot, or if you want to do another knot, you may. And then you're gonna snip that off, leave a little bit of a tail. You might have a little bit extra. This can just go in the garbage. So now we need to re-thread our needle. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our tape, and we are going to wrap that tape just once, kind of tuck that tape right over it, and then you can take your scissors after you've connected it and just cut off that remaining piece of tape. Make sure you're not cutting the string though. And now we're gonna thread that right through the eye again. And again, you're gonna want double thread. So, once you have it threaded double through your eye, you are going to cut it. And you can cut that tape off too, because we don't need that anymore. And we are going to bring our ends together, make sure they're at the same length, and we are going to do a loop with them, pull those two pieces through the string, and tie our knot, and you are going to double knot this one. I'm going to cut that little tail, and now when we start, we're going to want to make sure we start pushing through on the side with the tails. So I'm going to pull this up, and my knot should be on the back side with those other knots and tails. Alright, so I still have quite a bit of thread left, so I don't need to re-thread before I do my back stitch. You can see all of my petals are together. They're ready for me to start doing my back stitching. I haven't done the center of my flower because I'm going to do that with yellow thread, so we'll do that in a little while. If you have some thread left, you can start back stitching with me. If not, pause the video and re-thread your needle. Don't forget to put tape on the end of your thread to make sure that it goes right through the eye. Alright, so those who are ready to go back stitching, we are going to start, and I'm going to put it right through that hole that I've already gone through. See that? Pull it out, and I'm going to do this the whole way around. It's like mine knotted up a little bit. That's okay. You can kind of play with it a little bit to get it back together. And remember, you want to pull gently because the plate will tear easily. So do your best to make sure you're pulling it so that it's tight, but pulling it carefully so that's not too tight. Alright, so now my back stitching of all of my petals is done, and I'm ready to move to my center. But I need to change thread colors. I'm going to do yellow next. So I need to tie off, and I'm going to make sure I tie on the side with all of my little tails and knots. Alright, we're going to cut that. And now I'm ready for the center of my flower. So I need to take my thread off, and you can save your thread. If you have especially long pieces like this, save that for some other sewing projects. So before I can start to thread it, I'm going to do my tape on the end again. Gonna fold it over just once and ready for me to cut that tape. Alright, and we're going to thread that right through the eye of the needle. And again, we're going to still want that double thread. And I'd say I usually, with this thread, it's not bad to keep rethreading, so you can make it smaller if that's easier than having really long string. But for me, I'd say an arm's width apart, maybe a little bit less, just because the center of my flower is pretty small, so I don't need anything too big. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie the end of my yellow thread so it doesn't pull all the way through. And I just am going to cut that end off, my little tail, and make sure that I get the tape cut too. I don't want that getting stuck on my plate. Alright, and remember, we want to turn our plate over so that we're pushing the needle right through the side with all of our tails and knots. So pull that through, and you're just going to start to sew in and out, pushing through and pulling out. Alright, so now it's time for me to backstitch. Just going to make that whole center of my flower. See my flower image, and what I need to do to completely end it is I'm just going to double knot it again, making sure that I've ended on the side with all of my tails and knots. Double knot it. I'm going to cut that, and this thread I can save, I can use again. So I'll put my thread all together, and there it is. Thank you for joining me. So I definitely want to see your creations and your practice plate. You should also play around with the practice plate a little bit, and even before you do the lines, you can just start sewing, just getting into that motion. It doesn't have to look like a line. It doesn't have to look like a shape at all. It can just be just you practicing, getting that motion down. So I'd love to see your creations when you make them. You can have your parents email them to me or post them on social media. I'd love to see them. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to doing more sewing with you.